Alrighty, my thoughts on the classic album, Prince's 1999. What's going on, ladies and gents? It's Cyberline coming back to you with another album review. $1999. So, as far back as I can remember, 1999 was one of the first songs, besides I think Little Red Corvette and When Doves Cry, I can recall that I heard. But I never heard... I had never heard 1999 in its full... its entire full length. I always heard it cut. So when I finally did hear it, I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. This is how it sounds." I gotta say, this album is a classic. It's definitely a 10 out of 10 yes sirs for sure. And the reason why I would say that is because it was just totally different. The songs at this point, this is where Prince opens up sexually explicit. Nothing is PG-13. Everything is pretty much rated R on this album. This is where Prince opens the floodgates on what he wants to say, how he wants to say it. Very explicit. This album is not for kids, definitely. Outside of maybe like 1999 and Little Red Corvette. Nothing I didn't like on it. However, the one thing that does shock me about this album is how even to this day, there's no parental advisory sticker on it. And I understand, that didn't kick into effect until after Purple Rain. But even still, they should have went back and put it on this because, to me, this is probably one of the most, at least for where I have listened to Prince's album, this is probably one of the most explicit, just in your face, sexually explicit albums I have heard from this guy. Definitely. At least up until this point, later down the road, okay, this is who he is, but it's one of those things where it's like, I don't. This album was never played around me, and I can be, and it's not an album I would play around my kids. I would play maybe a couple songs and then switch to something else because there's so much stuff on here that is just like, this is adult music. This is not for kids. This is straight up adult. The other thing that I felt was very different was that Prince was having, and I get the Revolution, Prince of the Revolution. You had those members singing on the tracks. Definitely more so than you had. Controversy started, but it wasn't before that. So it's interesting to hear other members, like on 1999, for example, and then also other songs with the chorus. This album is really there is no disco. I wouldn't even say funk is in it. I would say this album is really a rock and new wave and R&B record. That's what I got from it. You could say a little funk, probably because of D.M.S.R, but overall, I just kind of felt like more R&B, rock, and new wave, definitely. And this is where he definitely starts utilizing a lot of those instruments that are from the 80s. This was released in the 80s, but it becomes a common theme with his work. Top 5 tracks, of course, 1999. D.M.S.R. That song, I think what I liked about it so much was the fact of the way the beat is, but then when you have the keyboard or whatever type of instrument that was, if it wasn't keyboard, very similar to it, how that was being played with the backing track of the drums and stuff, and then you have the bass come in. It was just like, it really was like a groovy track. I really like that song. Little Red Corvette, you know. One time I was in a Little Red Corvette with Vanity and Sheila E. It was at Morse. It's like Little Red Corvette I would always hear on the radio, so it's like a common song from his catalog. But it's just funny because, you know, that song really showcases Prince's vocal range at this point and how serious he's taking what he's putting out too. Definitely, it showcases more of a soulfulness to it than maybe what had been released prior to this album. Lady Cab Driver and Let's Pretend We're Married. However, before I get on to the music track, I gotta be blunt. Let's Pretend We're Married. I like the way the song goes and the way the music goes and stuff, but I gotta be frank. There are some times where I have to I just stop the track and move on. And the reason why is because, like, come on, dude. Like, it's one thing to keep having the instruments playing and stuff, but then when you start getting into, like, screwing this woman and what you want to do to this chick, I'm like, man, what the fuck is this, a porno at this point, you know? And I definitely feel like Prince low-key was starting to be was becoming that, and I think the younger me would have been turned off by this album for the most part, because I'd have been like, look, man, like, I'm not interested in porno music, I'm not interested in sexually explicit music, it doesn't interest me, it just never has. And I the younger me would have had a problem really with this track. The older me is like, I can appreciate it for what it is and the time period it was released in. But even still, I guess it's almost like, I wonder if Warner Brothers was even listening to his music when they were releasing it, because how did this album not get explicit? It still boggles my mind to this day. Like, how was Darling Nikki a big deal, but songs like Let's Pretend We're Married wasn't? Like, please explain that to me. That just blows my mind. Like, really, like, Darling Nikki wasn't explicit. It was just very informative. But Let's Pretend We're Married was literally explicit, and it's just how... Nonetheless, if you haven't listened to this album, if you listen to Purple Rain, this album goes, you know... That being said, we cue the music.